Hi there, welcome to another video of the Vickers MG Collection and Research Association. In this video we're going to be looking at another of our photo studies where we take a photo and look at it in a lot more detail. Now before we get there though, worth understanding the process of how we've got to this photo in particular. So patrons were given a choice of 5 photos, this time from the Imperial War Museum, and all looking at late in the Second World War. So a few from Italy, Northwest Europe, barrage fire mainly, indirect fire being used. Machine gun battalions in service, but also the parachute regiment in Greece. This was really interesting. I was expecting it to be chosen, but this was the one that was actually chosen. So there we go, this is the photo that's been chosen, and it's headlined "The Allied Campaign in Northwest Europe, 6th of June 1944 to 7th of May 1945. And of course this is the Imperial War Museum website, and we're able to look at some of the more information and look at the back of the photo itself, to look at the index card for it. And it tells us that it's the assault of the Rhine and the capture of Wesel, reference number BU2329, and there's an additional caption sheet that tells us the whole story. And it's Vickers machine guns being manned by commandos, taken on the 23rd of March 1945 by Sergeant Norris. The description that the Imperial War Museum give is down here. So crossing the Rhine, 24th to 31st of March 1945, British commandos of the 1st Commando Brigade manned 2 Vickers machine guns in the shattered outskirts of Wesel. The 1st Commandos, so not really probably the right term, but the 1st Commandos had formed the spearhead of the British assault by making a surprise crossing in assault craft on the night of 23rd, 24th March under a barrage of 1,500 guns. So that was a mix of artillery, and something we'll cover another time is how the machine guns were involved in that. Not these particular machine guns, but the machine guns of the divisional machine gun battalions, like the Middlesex Regiment and the Manchester Regiment involved in those, providing part of the pepper pot fire. So pepper pot was where you had mixed artillery and machine gun fire, all forming a massive barrage. So Sergeant Norris, number 5 Army Film and Photographic Unit there, Army Film Photo Section, sorry, part of the AFPU, Army Film Photographic Unit. So that's a name that does pop up quite a bit. And what's quite interesting before we move on is that 1st Commando Brigade had changed their name from 1st Special Service Brigade in December 1944 because of the SS title and the connotations that had with that. Obviously that's a whole brigade. One of the things that we're able to have done from a little bit additional research is pin these guys down to probably number 6 Commando. I can't guarantee it without doing a lot more digging, but number 6 Commando. There's a series of photos, maybe they're in the associated information down here. No, they're not actually, but there's a series of photos, some of which are positively identified as number 6 Commando going around Wesel. So I believe it's likely to be number 6 Commando, that were an army commando unit that these chaps belong to. So let's take a look at the photo itself. What can we see? Well, it's 2 Vickers machine guns, half the platoon there, a whole section, and in the heavy weapons troop. So commandos had each commando had a heavy weapons troop, and we've got the organisation, the order of battle for that, war establishment, whatever you want to call it, on the Vickers machine gun website on the commando page. So if you just have a quick search for commandos there, but the links will be in the information below as well in the description. And what we can see is actually they are likely to be firing, given the flat trajectory of the gun, and the fact that the tangent site here is right at the base, they're firing at 400 yards or less. So they are direct fire. They are seeing the targets they've got. Quite why this chap needs his binoculars for 400 yards possibly means that they're clearing out snipers or hidden enemy troops. Snipers perhaps too often used term there, but hidden enemy troops in here, so that the guy with the binoculars is trying to find those and clear them out from their hiding positions using machine gun fire. So we've got, he is the corporal. You can just see his stripes there on his Denniston, and I can't see any other rank there, but he's also acting, it seems, as the number 2, because there's no other chap on this gun. We've got number 1 and number 2 there, and the number 1 here. Not sure where. He's not acting as the number 2. It doesn't look like there's anybody behind him.
either. So he's spotting and acting as the number 2, which is quite interesting because it's not, number 2 is a really important job, as we've probably talked about. I reckon this guy down here is the number 3, or certainly an additional member of the section bringing up ammunition. But it's interesting how much kit there is lying around. So we've got an open ammunition lineup, but if you look, it's still full. But it's there clearly ready to be used, ready to be fired, or it's had a short amount of ammunition taken out because there is a little strip of bout just firing out. Looking at that, it's probably only had perhaps 25 rounds out of it, which might tell you that it's bad primers, it's been taken back out of the gun, or it's a part bout that's been brought forward. This bout here, you've got fully opened and still in position. You've got another liner over here, ammunition liner, and there is, I think you can see the ammunition liner laying down in there as well. So there's a bit of ammunition around, stuff they've carried forward. Can't really tell how long they've been in the position, but it's quite an interesting slit trench that they've dug. So they've dug enough so that the number 1s can stand up, and then the number 2s can lie down, which is probably more comfortable. The shovel's still there on this slit trench in particular. So they've done the minimum to get under cover. It's certainly easier to fire the Vickers from a standing position. It means you haven't got to sort of crouch down to be able to see along the line of sight, which if you're sat behind it, you quite often do. It's particularly if they're in these low positions. So yes, quite interesting to see them like that. A quick look at the background shows this really sort of scarred environment. Undergone significant bombardment or barrage ahead of the assault there. So lots of stuff there. Nothing I can really pick out. This is quite an interesting sort of shape, but it looks to be just a doorway in a house that's still standing. So or perhaps a shelter. There's something square in there as well. Maybe that's just another building. It's not really clear. If we look at the equipment themselves, all of the chaps are doing what commandos seem to do, and that's never wear their helmets. So they're wearing their berets, their green berets, and you can see from the size of this beret, it's not like a modern beret. It really is a bigger crown. This one's pulled over a bit more. You'd mistake that possibly for a more modern, smaller crown beret, but this chap here, cigarette in his mouth, you can see how it's that bit bigger and worn quite sloppily as well, but proudly as much as it is. They're also wearing the Denison smock, commonly associated with airborne troops. You can see that the monkey tail, as it's sometimes called, but the flap there that goes between the legs is hanging down loose. They're all wearing those. They all look to be early of the first pattern smocks, so you can see that they've got this woolen cuff, knitted cuff, rather than a shorter, flatter cuff. So that's on the earlier first pattern Denison smock. But it is an airborne item that the commandos took on board and started to use because it's a great bit of camouflage equipment. What else are they wearing? Very basic equipment. So this chap here only has his pistol order with no pistol. Always an interesting point to pick up. You can see the lanyard for it. Just coming down the back here. Can you see that there? He does have the lanyard for it tucked away, but we don't know where the pistol itself is. So maybe he's got it sort of forward and shoved in a pocket. He certainly has some more stuff in the front of his blouse, in the front of his smock there, so maybe he's just shoved it down the front. They're quite useful low carrying kit in the front. Now on this chap at the back, you can see that he has the double magazine pouch for magazines for the pistol. So that would be a Colt 45 probably. It's unlikely to be a Browning 9mm, although they did have them in service. The Browning mags don't really fit these pouches. There is a slightly later type of pouch, I believe, that has slightly larger to fit Browning mags, but it normally fits Colt 45s, and the Colt 45s are on war establishment as well. We also I think this here is the pistol holster of another set of webbing. It's not something else I recognise. Maybe it might be something else, but it's not really clear. The corporal clearly doesn't have his webbing equipment on, and this chap here doesn't either. You can just see the shoulder strap of his Denison smock looped over there, where he's obviously undone it to drop down to take his web equipment off. So what else we've got? You can see quite clearly boots and anklets being worn there. It's quite good to see that in service. It looks like they're the web tabbed anklets rather than the leather, but yeah, no particular reason for that. It just looks to be that's the case. Now the guns themselves seem to be both smooth jacketed Vickers. They look, as much as we can tell from it, they do look quite new. So they're likely to be Second World War production guns. They've got the short barrel casing cover that we know as a British one, as we sort of discussed. What's quite nice is you can see it worn towards the back of the gun on here and worn halfway up. It shows that it slips about a bit. And that there is no set position for it to be carried. If it moves, it moves. So what? Just make sure it's in the right place before you pick it up. We've got no other personal weapons other than the pistols being worn here, which perhaps goes a little bit more again to show that the commandos were generally lighter armed. They weren't carrying rifles and stuff like that. That the divisional machine gun battalions were, and we haven't got dial sights fitted to the guns because we're using them in direct fire rather than in indirect fire. So we haven't got them. We haven't got aiming lamps and stuff like that. I'm quite intrigued by this here. I don't really know what it is. It looks to be it could just be a bit of battleground debris, but it looks like it could be something for weapons related as well. I don't think it is, but these photos sometimes have the weirdest things in their detail. What we would normally be seeing as well in a sort of hasty position like this are perhaps the grenades and stuff like that available to the men to defend their positions. I think this is the condenser can, showing that with the hose going into it, and then we've got the same over here as well going into the 2-gallon condenser can. So a really interesting photo that shows very lightly armed troops, the commandos, quite very mobile, but still using the medium machine gun in its normal role, and actually in a much more mobile role. This is within 400 yards of the battle, so this is very much right in the front lines really for these guys. So the Vickers, so late on in the war, March 1945, being used right up front with light elite troops, is certainly something we probably it's certainly something that we don't expect to see at this stage of the war, and probably at this stage of the Vickers life. So we're much more used to seeing it in direct fire from perhaps 2,000 yards away, moving around in support of the division. But this is right up front, heavy weapons troop being used in direct fire and in close support of the men themselves. So hopefully that's been interesting. Thank you for watching. Please do sign up to Patreon and you'll be able to vote on what photos we do in the future. Hopefully you're all learning something from this. Do let us know in the comments below, and put forward your photos as well. Get in touch, let us know the photos that you'd like to analyse, and we'll try and do so. Try and cover as much as we can and get as much detail from these images as we possibly can learn from them. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and share the video and subscribe to the channel. Please support us on Patreon if you're able to, and let us know of anything you'd like to see in the future. I look forward to hearing from you.